Hello guys, today we're talking about the Gothic and Mary Shelley. The Gothic novel developed in the Romantic Age side by side with Romantic poetry. We know that since the beginning we have talked about the Romanticism as in opposition to the Enlightenment, to the Augustan Age, to the previous age. We have talked about emotion to represent Romanticism versus reason that had characterized the previous period. So, during the Romantic Age, not only poetry had a great development, but also the Gothic novel, which were the features of this literary genre. Great importance given to terror and horror, darkness, gloom, that stands for oscurità, tenebre, oppression and mystery. The setting in place was castles, old castles, abandoned and old abbeys, and these novels were populated by supernatural beings like vampires, monsters, ghosts, witches, heroes who fought against villains. Villain stands for criminali delinquenti, victims of their own impulses. Well, Mary Shelley is the most important representative of this romantic genre that was the Gothic novel. She was born in 1797, and so she could be set in the second generation of writers because of her birth date, 1597. Remember that the French Revolution, that is considered as a reference point during the Romantic Age, was in 1789. Well, Mary Shelley was the daughter of the famous feminist Mary Wollstonecraft and the philosopher William Godwin. Actually, her mother died only 10 days after her birth, and that caused her a strong sense of guilt that followed her, haunted her all life long. But her father married after 2 years, and Mary's stepmother and stepsister were the cause of great sufferings. Her emotional side was very frustrating. But if the emotional side was quite frustrating, the atmosphere, the intellectual atmosphere in her life was very stimulating, because her house was attended by the most important intellectuals of the time. As I have told you, her father was William Godwin. He was a philosopher of the time, a radical philosopher. He was of the previous generation, and he had supported the French Revolution. And this revolutionary and radical side was influenced Mary Shelley all life long. Actually, Mary's surname was Godwin, of course, because she was the daughter of William Godwin, and she decided to keep the surname of her future husband, that was Percy Shelley. As I was telling you, the intellectual atmosphere at home was very stimulating. Her house was attended by the poets Coleridge and Shelley, and she fell in love. They fell in love each other, and they eloped to Switzerland when she was only 17. They eloped to Switzerland, and they went to live on the Lake Geneva, very close to the place where Byron lived, that was Villa Diodati. Byron was another romantic poet, but belonging, along with Shelley and Keats, to the second generation of the romantic poets. It was just there in Switzerland that this awake nightmare, questo incubo ad occhi aperti of Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, was born. The plot is very simple. The scientist, Dr. Frankenstein, decides to create a human being by joining parts of corpses and using electricity to give it life. The result is an ugly and revolting monster who becomes a murderer and destroys his creature. The story is told by Walton, an explorer to the North Pole, in the form of letters to his sister. So, first of all, this novel is an epistolary novel, that is, it was written through letters. The letters written by Walton to his sister to tell the whole story of Dr. Frankenstein. And the novel is influenced by all the quite complicated emotional life of Mary Shelley, because she had this sense of guilt for her mother's death all life long, but also this story was the result of some readings that Mary Godwin did along with her husband Percy Shelley and Lord Byron, the readings of some Gothic novels that of course influenced her imagination a lot. But also a great influence had the scientific experiments of the time, the studies concerning reanimation of corpses, cadaveri, evolutionism, and electricity to reanimate animals. Especially some experiments were made in this sense on frogs, that of course resulted into a failure. The novel, in this novel, we also have the influence of Coleridge, because here also we have crime against nature, and the crime is the fact that Dr. Frankenstein challenges the laws of nature, breaks the laws of nature by trying to create a human being out of pieces of corpses, and so usurping the role of the woman, creating a life without the help of the woman. So in this sense, he breaks the laws of nature, exactly as in the rhyme of the ancient mariner, the mariner had done when he had killed the albatross. So this is evil. This is a serious fault that has to be paid. The main theme of this novel is the theme of the overreacher. As the name says, overreacher is the person who tries to go beyond, to reach limits that are beyond human power. The subtitle of Frankenstein, the complete title, is Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. Actually, this novel reproposes the theme that had to be exploited also in the following period, in the Victorian Age, that was the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus was, in the classical mythology, a Titan who had been forbidden by Jupiter to bring fire to men, but he had done it anyway, and so he had been punished by Jupiter by being chained, incatenato on a mountain, on a rock, and with his liver, col suo fegato, eaten continuously by an eagle. So the myth of Prometheus is very exploited in literature. So the myth of Prometheus, or the overreacher, as I have told you, is the person who tries to go beyond the limits. And the Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, tries to go beyond the human limits when he tries to create a life in an alternative way, a way that is not natural, that is through science, through chemistry, through combination of pieces of corpses. The result only brings about guilt, punishment, and creates a monster. Well, as for the monster, we also have to say that actually the monster isn't the true evil in the story, because true evil is Frankenstein, who has created this monster only out of his ambition. When the monster was created, it was a sort of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's noble sauvage. He is very naive, he is very ingenuous, and he is astonished at the way other people treat him because of his ugliness. He is very hurt by the attitude of people, full of prejudices. So he is the noble sauvage that is noble in his heart, but he is spoiled by society, is spoiled by the attitude of other men, and it is for this reason that he becomes evil, and he starts and becomes a murderer, and he causes the destruction of himself and of Dr. Frankenstein. Apart from, from this point of view, we can say that Frankenstein is a forerunner, un precursore of the picture of Dorian Gray and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that are important novels of the Gothic age, of the following age. As for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it is the doctor in Frankenstein and the Dr. Jekyll who are the cause of the following evil. Because Dr. Jekyll decides to create a human being, Mr. Hyde, that becomes his own consciousness, his bad consciousness, and his bad conscience, and so that he can preserve his respectability in the Victorian society by having Mr. Hyde do all the evil actions. Again, we have the myth of Prometheus, we have the overreacher, and again, the result can't but be terrible. In fact, Dr. Jekyll has to commit suicide in the end. Another theme is the double. The double is also present, of course, in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the monster is the double of Frankenstein, but also Frankenstein and Walton, that is the explorer, is the double of Frankenstein. He is also an overreacher because he tries to go beyond the human limits by reaching the North Pole. That's all for the lesson of today. Goodbye, guys. See you.